Welcome to the podcast, Colts Nation 365. This is episode number 8, and I'm your host, Zach Boyd. And as always, we'll do our weekly show with Chris D. He writes on our www.coltsnation365.com. He's got you covered every single week. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, doing great, man. Yeah, I did a lot of improvements to the site, so if you guys get a chance, go check it out.
Absolutely, man. It looks awesome. So, as we do every single week, Chris, we kind of start off at the top, and you've got the injury report covered. Big news with Andrew Luck today. I don't know if Jim Irsay was supposed to say something, accidentally said something. We now found out it has to do with a bone issue, not necessarily just the calf. What's the latest on Andrew? And then let's just kind of go down the list.
Yeah, so the bone issue that he was referring to, I don't know exactly how to say it. It's like mycosis auspicians or something like that. It's pretty much a bone issue that when you do have some sort of strain or injury, it's a issue with how the injury has healed. So there's a chance that, maybe when Luck actually had the setback, this is what actually happened to his bone and to his calf. So, I'm kind of with you. I don't think Irsay was supposed to say anything. I guess Andrew has been out throwing the ball to receivers. He just has not participated in any of the team drills. So they're probably just working through it, getting his knee a lot stronger. And it's mostly just something that needs rehab on it. So it's probably just didn't heal right, and they had a little bit of a minor setback.
So everybody knows about Andrew. What about, I guess, Jabal Sheard? Probably just the waiting game. I don't expect to see him. Paris Campbell had a little bit of a minor setback. Otherwise, I think we look. What are you thinking on everybody else so far, Chris?
Yeah, so Quentin Nelson did miss a day of practice. I believe it was an ankle injury. I'm not too worried about Nelson. I think he'll be fine. Jalen Collins was removed for the preseason game for a minor injury. He was back at practice. And then Ross Travis has been back to practice as well. And like you said, we still don't have any actual concrete information on Jabal Sheard. So we're still waiting on that.
So overall, though, I guess at this time of year, this stage of the game, I guess we're pretty happy with where we are as far as the injuries go. I guess we can move on. Kind of wanted to do a little bit of a recap preseason game 1, just going to kind of refresh that and kind of get that out of the way, and then start working on preseason week 2 here coming up. So I did a few notes, Chris, a few players that kind of stood out to me. EJ Speed. He made some real good read and react plays in the game. Carroll Phillips, he did have a couple sacks. I think they were more of a breakdown and protection. I wouldn't get crazy about that. I thought Quincy Wilson played solid. Reese Fountain was really, for me, probably the most impressive guy. I mean, I know he did it against the 3s and the 4s, but you still got to catch the football no matter who's throwing you the football. So I'm impressed with him. And then also, I think Khari Willis flashed a little bit. He didn't have a whole lot of impactful plays, but he showed he's going to be a willing hitter. How'd you feel about the game, man?
Yeah, so I'm really going to agree with you pretty much with all those players. It seemed like all of them had really nice moments in the game. Fountain made some really tough contested catches. And that seemed to actually carry over in this week's practice. It seemed like he got a little bit more consistent, was making plays all week. With EJ Speed, you can kind of see exactly the type of player he's going to be. He's going to be a player that's going to be just all over the field, being a playmaker. Just he that guy looks big and long out there. He's really exciting to watch, and we're going to watch him develop, I think, quite a lot this year. Khari Willis, I was kind of surprised to see how they were using him. They were putting him on the line to guard, I think, mostly some tight ends and then some receivers. And he just looked like he was comfortable in that role. Quincy Wilson, he played pretty nice. He had some nice moments here or there. Other than that, those are the kind of the guys that, really, really impressed. You mentioned Carroll Phillips. I think, a lot of his plays were just, like you said, something broke down. and he was in the right place at the right time, making the right plays. So
All right, let's go in the other direction. Things that did not impress us. I think we can both probably agree the offensive line looked poor throughout that game. I know Frank Reich had mentioned there was a communication error, but nevertheless, I mean, they just didn't block well. They didn't give their guys a chance to have any time to throw. They seemed to settle down a little bit, when Chad Kelly came in, but overall, they didn't look great to me. Another guy that I thought kind of got torched in the end zone, Nate Hairston. A guy, I just don't know how I feel about him playing on the outside. Um, Other than that, it's a pretty even kill preseason game. Kind of what you expect. Some ups and downs. Do you have anything that stood out to you as far as not good for that game?
so like you said with the offensive line, I was really hoping that Raven Clark was going to take a big step forward this year. I thought that when he filled in for Costanzo last year, he actually didn't play too bad. He wasn't as much of a plus in the run game, but he kind of held his own in pass protection, and that was not the case for this game. He seemed to get just beat up pretty much most of the time. Obviously, the Bills do have a really nice defensive line, even some depth on there. So, but just he needs to play better if he really wants to keep his job. Work himself into a next contract. Another person that really kind of stood out to me as having a really poor performance would have been Philip Walker. I don't know if the helmet issue really affected him too much. I expect a little bit more out of him, being that this is his, I think, third year with the Colts and the second year in this system. So I just, he made some really poor throws. He didn't really keep his eyes down and watching the defenders. Probably could have had a couple more interceptions that he got lucky on. And Nate Hairston, yeah, that really blown coverage in the end zone, just his stock's just kind of going down. I know he's had a nice camp, but when you turn on the lights and that's what you see, there's a little bit of concern with him.
All right, Chris, let's go this direction, man. Wide receiver has been talked about as the toughest position battle so far in camp. I talked about it with George Bremer last week. Talked about it this morning, with Andrew Walker on the podcast. So I'm going to give you 5 wide receivers, and I'll do the same. I'm going to ask you to pick 3 of these guys to make this football team. Now, this is, if we keep 6 people. But we're going to go with Reese Fountain, Chester Rogers, Deion Kane, Zach Pascal, and Marcus Johnson. And for me, I'll go first. I'm going to go with Pascal, Kane. I've had a change of heart. Now, this is going to sound crazy, and maybe we will line up in agreement on this. Just listening to Andrew Walker this morning, sounds like Chester Rogers has the inside track on this job. I don't know how I feel about them. I think, Reese Fountain, I think Marcus Johnson have much more upside. I'd like to see us keep one of those 2 players. But if you're asking me after, what I've heard this morning, it feels like that they value Rodgers a little more than those other guys. And, what are your thoughts on that, man?
Uh, in terms of Rodgers, I think there's a couple of good reasons that we're gonna maybe keep him around, and that would be due to one, the Paris Campbell injury. I know we wanted to try him on some punt returns, and he would get a lot of play out of the slot. And if he hasn't been practicing, Rodgers would be currently the best player for that role. The biggest knock on Rodgers right now is I think he's kind of already hit his ceiling. I don't think he really has so much more upside to where he's going to be, that really good fourth, fifth receiver doesn't get a lot of play anyways. Um, but I just don't think he's really ready to take the next step. I don't think he's doesn't have it in him. So if I'm going to pick receivers, I'm actually going to go with Kane, Fountain, and I'm going to probably go with Pascal due to the fact that he does a lot in the special teams category. He can do some punt returns or some kick returns. He's actually a really good gunner. Actually, he did some really nice tackles in the preseason game. So
Yeah.
And then Fountain, obviously, like we talked about him during the preseason, kind of after game, and Fountain had just a wonderful, wonderful game, and it's translating into some really good on-field production. And then
And
Dion Kane, right now, you saw him in practice. Frank Reich kind of gushed about him, saying, he caught like 3 or 4 deep balls in one practice. And I guess if you catch one of those, that's amazing. So his stock's finally going up, and looks like he's finally getting back into it.
yeah, I tell you one thing too about Fountain. I really feel like his upside can really kind of translate and take over for Devin Funchess. I don't see Devin Funchess as a long term solution for us. He's a 1 year rental. Um, we hope Devin can have a great year, but with all of the guys that we're going to have to sign moving forward with extensions, I don't think Devin Funchess is going to be at the top of that list. And a guy like Reese Fountain, who can high point that ball like he did from Chad Kelly in that first game, can maybe translate into that same position and give us some of those same qualities. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, it was interesting, we were talking about earlier. Colts are fielding some calls for trades, and that funny, we were talking about wide receiver. That might be a position that's hot for us. What are you hearing on that?
Probably about what everyone else is hearing. The Colts are, they're fielding the calls. They're not actively trying to trade anyone or actively trying to shop anyone. It's still a little early in preseason to be worried about, really trading anyone. There's so many things that can happen between now and the actual season. Some injuries could happen, uh, and it's just not really worth it for us to get rid of that depth right now. And a lot of the guys I think that we would trade around are probably still really young guys who still have some more growing to do. I could see a couple positions like our wide receiver group who we're already kind of discussing, who's going to make the team. I could see someone out of that group get traded, as also as our cornerback group is very, very crowded. So I could see maybe someone off of there getting traded. You have any thoughts on that?
Man, it's really kind of the highest compliment, when you put together a team and teams are calling about your players that you have, or they're just waiting and salivating to pick up your guys on that final 53-man cut. It's really just, something to say Chris Ballard has turned this team around to this position in such a short amount of time. And yeah, I would actually think Chester Rogers would have a pretty good commodity for a team that needs that slot receiver, maybe that punt returner, and they're just really with a very young group and they need that veteran presence in there. He may be a guy that, Chris Ballard may say, hey, let's get a 6th or 7th round pick. We're going to go with the younger guys. But I think we're going to let this play out for the most part. We'll see how it happens. I don't think now, after the news with Andrew, I don't think there's going to be any question about Jacoby Brissett. We're just not going to be able to make that decision at this point. I wanted to kind of hop into preseason game 2, some expectations, Chris, and I kind of had a couple things that I wrote down just for myself, what we were going to look over. And we talked about receivers a lot in this podcast, but I'm going to look for which receiver, starts to take that next step. You're looking at Kane, you're looking at Fountain, you're looking at Marcus Johnson, you're looking at Chester Rogers. Which one's going to start separate themselves from the pack? Does Reese Fountain get a chance to play with the second string and maybe see how he can play with that unit? I'm also going to be looking at Chad Kelly and Philip Walker. I am not a fan of Philip Walker. I've been very, very vocal about that, and I think Kelly needs reps with the number 2s. I think he's earned that. I don't know if the Colts feel that way about him. And other than that, I'll turn it over to you, man. You got anything you're looking forward to seeing in this game?
Yeah, a couple things I really want to watch for is I want to see if the offensive line play can improve. If we can finally get something going in the run game. We had a really atrocious game last preseason game. I really want them to shore it up. Maybe hopefully we'll see Kelly back, maybe some Costanzo, and just see if we can kind of get something going. And I'm really curious to see how much the starters are going to play. If it's just going to be a little bit. I know we got training camp with them, so they're going to see a lot of each other this week. But for the actual game, how much are they going to play together? Are we going to have some nice new schemes for them, uh, or is that just going to kind of be vanilla as it was in the first game? I'm really hoping that we can throw together a couple drives so we can see what everyone can do. We've kind of seen bits and pieces. Funches had some passes in the first game, and maybe we can see Ty for a couple plays here and there, and just move down the field and show that we can actually score.
Chris, you think we'll have more players play in this game? I know we had a lot of starters out in that last game. Just your overall feel, not trying to put you on the spot, just your expectations. You think you'll see maybe, an Ebron and a Denico Autry and you said a minute ago, T.Y. Hilton. You expect those guys to maybe get on the field a little more in this game?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit closer to the season. I think the more they can play together, and especially with Andrew Luck's uh, status still kind of being a little bit questionable, I think they need to play a little bit more together just in case, and to still kind of we got some new toys. Funches is going to be one of those big kind of players, and I want to see them all do it together quite a lot this game.
Yeah, man, it should be fun. I don't know how I feel about, joint practices. I do think they're beneficial for the teams, but you're always seeing these guys, ESPN, NFL Network, and these huge fights. I worry about cheap shots and situations like that. But I guess I get it. Iron sharpens iron. It does make you better. So it'll be fun to see. Baker Mayfield, OBJ, Jarvis Landry seems like he's going to come back. It'll be a good test for our team and a good barometer to see where we're at. Chris, just had a quick question for you. What you writing about, man? I know everybody looks forward to seeing your articles come up on the website. You got any ideas of what you're going to be writing about?
So I know we kind of hit on it a little bit today. I actually just posted something about who the Colts could be trading. I think I named about 5 players. One of them being Chester Rogers. I know you kind of alluded to that earlier. And as for right now, that's kind of where I'm at, and kind of planning on doing maybe some more upgrades to the site. I know I got a couple more things I want to do to it. And then probably after the preseason game, I'll do some kind of thoughts and see what happened with that.
Yeah, man, it sounds really good. And Colts Nation 365, just want to give you a big thank you on behalf of me, on behalf of Chris. We work very hard to kind of provide you with the best quality content that we can provide. We'll also be, we've already introduced a new writer, Adam Reuter. He has a really good mind and good insight on things that are coming. So exciting times for us. So if you guys ever have any questions, concerns, just hit me or Chris up on Twitter. Email, we're accessible 24 hours a day. And thank you guys so much for joining our show. Until next week, we'll see you then. Take care, Chris.
Take it easy, guys.